Hiya, hiya. It's another wonderful event. I'm in Florida, and in Los Angeles, which is my alma mater, we have Ron Alexenburg, who has gone state's witness on us. He's a guy who would never leave Chicago, so he moved to New York. And then when he was in New York as an executive, he would never leave New York. Then he went to Long Island. And when he went to Long Island, would never leave Long Island. So then he went to California. This is a guy that would never leave, although he's had companies in all of those cities. And I want to talk to Ron about something special. I want to set the tone here for a minute, because instead of going through your whole resume, people can look that up. They can Google you, Wikipedia you. You can go to Ronnie Records or Ron Alexenburg. But what I want to talk about is something that doesn't get covered a lot. And even Ron, when he does his shows, and he's going to do some podcasts and other things, because he's an adventuresome soul and a good friend, incidentally, for life, for a long time. But I want to bring up something that I don't see discussed on the air too much. You know, everybody's doing the politics and the schmooze and the things that go on in our lives that are pretty local. But what we never talk about, for some reason, is I'm a radio guy. I started on radio. I actually started on television. By fixing a contest, they booted me off of television because I won the announcer of the future contest by Xeroxing the votes. So they then hired me as a salesman because they figured I was so full of crap I would be good in sales, which is true. So then I moved into the radio realm, and I worked my way all the way up the ladder. And then when Beatles came, I knew they were going to be bigger than the jock because I was there for my own ego. And, I got out of the personality game and then into other things. Now, Ron and I have been friends through all this, but the thing that has made radio and records the popular, great pastime, bigger than baseball, is the radio marriage to records. And the persons who made the marriage were the promotion men. And that's how I met Ron Alexenburg. And what's a promotion man? Okay, a salesman, an agent, a pimp. But Ron came from Chicago, and he was assigned to the batting cage of Joey Reynolds when I was the number one jock in the country for a while. And Ron came in and mesmerized me. He took me out to eat, and I didn't have to pay. So he owned me. But Ron, now on the side, what I'd like to talk about, and I'd like you to talk about, is we don't talk about this a lot, and I don't think the public knows. What's a promotion man?
Well, first of all, it's nice to see you, and thank you for asking me to tell lies about you. But the availability of a promotion man or woman, promotion people, is to learn how to take a negative and make it a positive. If they can't do that, then they don't belong in the business. Because I never had anybody, including you, knock on my door and say, now what do you want me to play? And I never had a retailer say, now what do you want me to buy? So I got to be careful with this next statement, moving to California. But we were always pitching and you were catching. And now, I'm pitching and hopefully they're catching. But it's a different world right now. And it was because of, and I mean this sincerely, somebody like you who was at the top of the heap, that people were saying, oh, he's tough, man, and he won't see you, and he won't talk to you, and I said, oh, really? So I got a hold of Steve Popovich, God rest his soul, and I said, tell me about Joey Reynolds. And he said, well, he's a tough cat, man. People line up to see him, and Marge Bush does the music, and then he'll decide what he wants to play when he wants to play it. What do you got? And I said, well, I've got this new release on Date Records, which I began to think was a tax write-off for CBS because we had released 10 records and none of them were hits. And a friend of his, a good friend of his, Bob Crew, God rest his soul, had produced a Distant Cousins, Ray Bloodworth and Don, and that record was a stiff. And
I forgot that.
And I got to Cleveland. And it's a quick, funny story. So they put me into the Luxembourg Hotel, and Lenny Luxembourg owned it. And they said, oh, you must be related. I didn't tell them that my name was Alexenburg. And she said, well, therefore, we'll comp your room. So I started out okay. I called the station. I said, I'd like to meet Joey Reynolds. And they said, who are you? And I said, I'm a new regional promotion man for Date Records, and I'd like to meet him. And Marge was a sweetheart. And she said, come on out to the station. So Steve drove me out to the station. Joey was on the air. And the toughest thing you can do to these guys is interrupt them. But I knocked on the window, and he looked at me like, who are you? And I said, well, I'm a new promotion man. What do you want? And I said, well, I'd like to meet you and talk to you. I get off the air at 6 o'clock or whatever the time was. And I said, well, great. Then I'll stick around. I think it was a 2-hour wait. He came out, baggy pants and all, and he said, what do you want? And I said, I'd like to get to know you because you're smart. I listened to you on the air, because that was the biggest problem that people had in the business. They didn't listen before they went to meet these people. They just walked in and said, I'm a promotion person, not having a clue as to what an air personality did for a living. Okay. And we met, we talked. He wanted to know who Peaches and Herb was. I said, I told a little fib, because promotion people can hype a little bit to get the attention. But what I said to him, he didn't believe that Herb Fame was a cop in Washington, and he recorded with Francine Barker for David Kaprolik, God rest his soul, who discovered, amongst other people, Barbra Streisand, Sly and the Family Stone, and signed Johnny Mathis. Other than that, he did nothing in the business. But we had a Peaches and Herb record, and the next day, I think, Joey, we met on a Friday. The next day was a Saturday, and I was asked to do the Upbeat show. Yeah. And I had to go. And I said, Joey, what do you know about this guy Webster? And he said he combs his hair really well, but Joey wasn't too complimentary of him. And I said, what do you know about Herman Spiro? And he said, oh, he owns the show, and it's a very good show. It's a local Cleveland show. Years later, I said, Joey Reynolds should have the show, because there's nobody that can get people to talk about themselves, about their careers better, with respect, than Joey. And I took a fancy to somebody like that. I followed him to Detroit, where he pulled off one of the greatest coups of all time by saying that he's the only radio station on the air, and he told the guy to shut down at CKLW and at Keener, and it was all a lie. And I asked him to play my record. Instead, he played Mitch Ryder in the Detroit Wheels for Bob Crew, and that's how I met Bob Crew. We got along well. So it's been a relationship that I cherish. It's been one that I miss, because today it's an altogether different world. And I can talk to him about music. I watch his Reynolds rap every day. I like when the pigeon almost crap on his head, because I wanted to do that, but I couldn't get that close. But the interviews that I've watched him do, we were partners in a show then at the NASDAQ window, which to me this day is still the best we could have done together, where 1 million people walked by Joey at 10 o'clock at night, and he held an audience without a rehearsal, without a script, and had some of the best people. The Danny Aiello, God rest his soul, interviews that Joey did constantly with people like him and Frankie Valli and all that. These are all people that I worked with from a different point of view. So promotion, to get back to your question, thank God I had the opportunity to go to radio. I had confidence, because you gave me confidence when you played my music. And I went back from Cleveland to WLS in Chicago, which was the second most powerful radio station in the United States. And I said, this guy's not such a creep. Who are you talking about? Joey Reynolds. Are you kidding? Did you take him out to eat? I said, yeah. He even offered to pay, but he never put up a credit card until later. There's only 2 people. This is important, Frank. There's only 2 people that ever bought me a meal. Well, 3. Scott Muni, God rest his soul, was one of them. Of course, we had a few cocktails together at Danny's Hideaway, and I think he forgot that he offered to buy me dinner. George Michael, and Joey Reynolds. And he respected promotion people for what they did for a living. He would give you a hard time just to see if you would back off. There's another guy like that called Mick Jagger. Jagger will say things to you just to see how you react. And it's great to see you. And sorry for this virus that's going around, and what we have to deal with. And hearing that in the state of New York, that governor, who's phenomenal, just had to report today that a 5-year-old little kid, and you and I are grandparents, died from the virus. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's unreal. So sorry to end my rap with that note.
No. You had a party recently, a birthday party in your backyard in LA.
Well, yeah, I have a daughter who's fond of you. I have 2 daughters that are fond of you. One tried to make a living for you, but you didn't screen test. So that's Ivy. And Marnie, our youngest daughter, had her birthday, and she's in a little movie, if you haven't seen it, called Something About Mary. And we made up T-shirts. In fact, I have one here I can show you called Something About Marnie. And that was 20 years ago. And that movie has helped pay for 2 in vitro babies. And her husband, Scott, just caught a bad break where they built the Bourbon Room here on Hollywood Boulevard, where Joey used to hang out. And Rock of Ages is his show, and hopefully it'll reopen. And when I do my podcast, Joey, and I have you on it, I'm going to ask for you to come on, and hopefully we can pull the lead through, who's in a coma over there. And they just raised $500,000 through GoFundMe for the lead in Rock of Ages because of he's in a coma, lost his leg, being a diabetic. I can only tell you that that's the disease that we need to pay attention to. But back to promotion. The art of being a promotion man or woman is so gone. You have radio stations. You would never tolerate it, having one guy tell you to play what to play and how to play it on 130 radio stations. No, not fair. Not fair to the artist, the songwriters. I applaud Nashville again. They're breaking artists. They're not categorizing the music. That's my biggest complaint to the staff that I ran. I had the best staffs in the record business. I started at Columbia, then I went to Epic, then I had Infinity.
Wait, we're going to bring all that up, but I want to make a point here before I forget.
It's still your show. You can bring it up.
Well, thank you. The reason you like Cuomo is because he's a straight shooter on the air, and he also really respected the public. He's talking about people living rather than economy, although we need an economy. But he respects people, and he's very nurturing. So that's the same thing when you have a regard for the audience. A lot of these new broadcasters, they don't think about the audience. They're not thinking about what people think, and they don't think like people. They're not living like them, maybe, or they don't really give a rat's ass about anybody except themselves. As a rule, that's some people. But we need to really get back to the value. And now, the reason I brought up the promotion man. Now, there's a hidden agenda here. What made this thing hum? We have so many artists that have become superstars, and they're legends, truly legends. And I'm going to ask you about that in a second. But let me make my point first. So, with all of these people you have had in your life, if we did not have the marriage of radio and records, here's how it worked. A local station would have somebody there locally, somebody in town, like let's say the Upbeats in Cleveland, Ohio, or they had Time Won't Let Me. That's a local group. They were on here, Herman Spiro's show at the time, Upbeat, which you mentioned. So just as an example. So that was a local record. But you took it and you went to Chicago with it. That wasn't your particular record, but I'm just saying it as an example. And you would take it into the regional, and it becomes national, and all of a sudden it's on the Billboard charts and it's in the top 10. And it's all the trade sheets, so it's a big hit everywhere you go with it. And that's how we built an empire of loyalty for the fans. And so the fans don't have that anymore. We don't have the fan base anymore. It's different. It's not the same way that we did it, which was to expose the local, bring them regional, make them national. It was a routing. And the promotion men would take that, and they were the gossip of the industry. They would help the jocks get jobs. They were the guys who knew what was going on to help you so that you could do better in the ratings because of an idea of a contest maybe, or some gimmick that someone was doing in another city.
True.
You were, presenting the music and also a background of the artist, and then introducing the artist to the person. And then we would have what we call in those days record hops. Those are giveaways. But the fact is that it was an industry based on respect for everybody who had their part in it in the play, and we built a loyalty base with the audience, and the audience loved what we were doing. Well, when did it stop? When did that stop?
Well, let's talk, because you were one that did record hops, as did the people who don't understand what that was. And I was just on a podcast where I explained that I took Mitch Ryder into a bowling alley parking lot with Ron Riley from WLS in Chicago so I could get a Bobby Goldsboro record played. And we flew on a little Cessna to get there. I mean, you risk your life for this business. Thank God I had that to do. And what people like you did, you get to meet the artists and you talk to them and you ask them. Just recently, we had somebody in an EAA program that I introduced you to, and you were a tremendous help because of your sobriety, if I can say. And you always were helping. And we developed that rapport. You trusted me, I trusted you. You couldn't trust a lot of the promotion people. I mean, I told my staff, if you ever get caught in a lie, if the record goes on the air, I'll back you. But if they turn the record down, I'll say you're a liar. And a perfect example of how the business related was to a man that I feature in my book. You'll allow me to tell you that I am close to finishing my book that's called From the Warehouse to the Penthouse. And you've already done it, and I'm having a tough time finishing it because it's the hardest thing I ever did. But it's not about me. It's about people like you. And a guy named Russ Solomon, who took me under his wing, and when he said, don't ask me how the Boston record is doing when you're calling me and I'm at the Harvard store and you didn't tell me that it was going to go on RKO and that they were going to feature it, and it's another band that you signed that nobody wanted, Boston. So when More Than a Feeling went on the air, I said, Russ, how's it doing? He said, I sold 3 feet of it because he hated computers. He didn't. So I called Mel.
Well, you got to tell him it was Tower Records. It was a record
it was
store.
Tower Records.
Yeah.
So I called Mel Phillips, who's then ended up working for me years later, but working with me. And he said, so what kind of response did you get from my airplay? I said, in 4 days, he sold 3 feet. He said, he doesn't know. We sent him boxes, and the boxes, he sold 3 feet. But that relationship with Russ Solomon turned into radio relationships, KHJ, and all the big stations, the Drake channels. And it was a story that, thank God, in 1964, when I was asked not to go to the University of Chicago Law School because I was too opinionated, and I got into my Corvette that I won in a bowling tournament and drove to Garmisa Distributing and said, I need a job. Ron, you need a job? Yeah, any kind of job. I don't care what it is. I'll put you in the warehouse. So that's why it's called From the Warehouse to the Penthouse. And it was the best education you could ever get. And then having a love of rhythm and blues like you do, Joey, and getting to CBS at Columbia, we didn't have any African-American artists. They thought Johnny Mathis was R&B. Sorry. Okay. So I told them about these 2 producers in Philadelphia that made a record with a guy named Jerry Butler called
Gamble and Hop.
That's
Gamble
right. Only the Strong Survive, which is something everybody should be listening to right now. And I got on a train and I went down there, and they played for me and Mrs. Jones and Love Train, and the next is history. And Philadelphia International became the gift that I brought back to the building. And I'm proud to say that you played every one of those records, even though Paul Drew likes to take credit for When Will I See You Again at CKLW, and you played it before he did.
Well, it was just such a wonderful, it was great to be a part of something that makes it, and then later on say, okay, I know where that came from. But, the public never knew that there were people behind the scenes. That's why I'm bringing this up. They didn't know there was someone that was working the country. I mean, this is lobbying at its best, because you didn't even know. the public never lobbying. You know the money behind it, and not the players necessarily, but the system of the radio and records marriage, which was unfortunately there's a divorce, but the marriage was great and it worked for everybody. So let's go along. Ron has done some innovative things. One of which is with me. We had the Times Square footprint, which was when we did the first show out of the NASDAQ window in Times Square, and NBC digital channel, which no one knew what that was. And also we were doing something that was every night, 10 to midnight, without anybody's money. We didn't have any sponsors. We had spent our own money that we could get together with our partners. But you had a very rich background of discovering talent, and you really promoted talent a lot. You were very good at. You had a good ear. And Ron, to prove it, he started a record company. And this is a long story, but he started a record company called National Records. Is that what it was? National Records?
Yeah, the National Record Company. It was part of a video company, National Video, and I changed it to National Record Company.
What I liked about it was every artist was also a writer, a musician, or something that was more than just the singer. And you found these excellent people, and you put them all together. Each of them, and it was a wonderful collection. So why do we not know all of them now? Where did it go? Where did it go wrong?
Of all the years we've known each other, and you knew me as the head of Columbia, the head of Infinity, the head of Epic. That's your favorite label, and I love you for it, because the Ivy Marchese's and all those artists that you helped me with, each had their own collision course, because they all wanted to be superstars. And a lot of them weren't paying the dues that you had to pay, like getting in a car with a guitar and your band and driving to various places, small state. Anybody that had an antenna, I would tell them, you stop at any place that has an antenna. Okay? But no, they wanted to be at ABC and all the big stations. A typical example, and they're wonderful boys, and I just saw their parents again. You remember the twins, J.P. Malfetta.
Oh, yeah.
So I get them a shot at American Idol, and they get on there, and Simon Cowell said, you're supposed to perform separately. Well, we're twins. And they got into a fight with him, and that took care of that career. Okay? Now they're selling homes very well, and their parents, and raising homes in Connecticut. And their father, John, and I were just in Vegas together. But what it was a label that was an independent label that needed help. And the help that it needed was not from radio, it was from a distributor. And that was the mistake that I made of going back to my haunt, CBS, which was the best distributor in the business.
Oh, yeah.
Not because I worked there, but because it was proven that Columbia distribution was the best, and Warner's patterned themselves after it. Now, what I hope will happen, you haven't asked me, but I think it's coming close. The business is going back into independent thinking, and hopefully independent distributors like you and I started. When you were in Cleveland on the air, there was like 4 or 5 independent labels. You mentioned Roger Karshner's thing from Cleveland, and you would take that. In fact, the funny story that I talk about you in my book, and I'm giving an exclusive to you, is I asked you that Friday night after Wixie added the Peaches and Herb record, you said, now what are you going to do? I said, well, after the Upbeat show, it's Sunday, and you said, well, let's hang out, and we did. It came Monday morning, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to go to Detroit. And he said, oh, are you driving? I said, no, but I can't believe the name of this airlines that I'm flying on. Tag Airlines. You remember that? It was a DC-6, and it was Tag Airlines. And I got into Detroit to meet Russ Yergi, God rest his soul. And we went to Keener, we went to XYZ, we went to CK, and got turned down everywhere. So then I went over to CHB, the R&B station, and JLB, and they both added the record. And I called our dear friend Tommy Noonan, and I said, I got it added. He said, well, now you got to go back to Pittsburgh. And this is a classic. So I go back to Pittsburgh. I go to meet John Rook, God rest his soul. He makes me wait 2.5 hours sitting in the lobby and walks right past me. Okay? And he goes out to lunch with the Harry Finfer and those guys from Pittsburgh. And I said, well, I'll go back to the hotel. I go to the hotel. I wake up in the morning. I look across out of the window and I see WIGS. Don't say anything, Joey. WIGS. I get dressed, a shirt and tie. I go over. I open the door, and there's a nice African-American lady sitting there. And I said, I'd like to see the program director. And she says, program director? I said, yeah, this is a radio station, isn't it? She says, no, it's a wig store. WIGS. That's a promotion, man. That's a true story.
Now, you know, we had an experience too in Detroit after hours. It's called a blind pig, where you would knock on the door at 3 o'clock in the morning when the bars are closed, and they would let you in. You know, it was knock 3 times and tell them Joe sent you, you know, that kind of thing. So we were in there, and there was a young lady that was with me, and you didn't know who she was, and we weren't solid yet. And who was that young lady? Do you remember?
Liza Minnelli.
Did we have some fun in those days?
Oh my God! God! When Paul Cannon, one of the meanest people I ever met, a program director Keener, and Bob Crew, your friend, smashed his hourglass all over his desk because he did a 15-minute. He gave Bob Crew 15 minutes to talk to him about Mitch Ryder, and I had to follow that. And there's sand all over his desk. So the record we tried to get played was Red Rubber Ball. He said, I don't want to play that record. The Circle. Yeah. Yeah, it was top 10 in the country, and he didn't want to play it. So Russ Yergi, our promotion man, he said, what are we going to do? I said, take me to a sporting goods store. And he took me to a sporting goods store, and I bought 50 Red Rubber Balls, and I wrote on them, Red Rubber Ball, Circle, Columbia Records, took them back to the station, threw them on the floor, and the balls rolled all over and Scotty Regan, your friend, picked one up and he said, what the hell is this? Red Rubber Ball, Circle, Columbia Records. That's how it got on the air. Not accepting no as an answer was one of the answers to your questions.
Well, one of the no's that you didn't accept was Michael Jackson.
Oh, I was called all kinds of names on that one.
Yeah, tell us about it. Come on. This is a special story. No one's going to hear this until you print it.
Yeah, they are. Well, there's this hotel in New York called the Warwick Hotel, which was right next to the ABC building, right next around from the CBS building. I used to park my car in the garage. And one night I'm pulling out, there's a bunch of kids all in front of this hotel. So I left my car there and I walk into the doorman who I used to stay with there at night when the snow was coming down and I wasn't driving to Long Island. And I said, what the hell? Frank was his name. What's going on here? He says, the Jackson 5 are here. And this hotel is chaotic. It's a mess. So I said, hey, I'd like to meet Michael. And I went to the house phone and I picked it up and I asked for Michael Jackson's room 805. And he answered the phone. And I said, Michael, my name is Ron Alexenburg. And he says, I know who you are. I said, well, I know who you are. I'd like to meet you. So he came down in the elevator with his father and his dad's lawyer. And we sat, we talked. I ordered some juice for Michael. And we just got to know each other. And I said, gee, you're playing Westbury Music Fair on Saturday. And I'd like to bring my family. And I'd like you to meet them. And I'd like to meet yours. Why don't you come to my house for lunch? And he said, okay. So here came the entire Jackson family and their chaperones to a pretty white Jewish neighborhood where Hi Weiss, our friend, lived across the street.
Oh, yeah.
And
well, let's tell him. Wait, stop. Tell him who Hi Weiss is, because
he was the founder of Old Town Records. He was Morris Levy's best friend, George Goldner's best friend.
Which
he
gave
had
us
Arthur Prysock.
So many hits. But then later on, where did Hi Weiss go? Let's take it up a notch here.
Well, he was representing Vulex and Stax Records, and he would get $1 for every pressing. So he'd order 50,000 Little Milton albums that nobody wanted, but he got $50 for $1 for each one. But his son Barry, I hired when nobody would hire him because he was his father's son. And he's probably the best A&R man today in the music business.
And
he
successful.
signed NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears. I think he did okay, you know.
Yeah.
But to finish this story,
Yeah, with Michael.
came over, and I said, Michael, what are you doing later? And he said, nothing. I said, well, you're not playing tonight. Come on over to my office. We sat and we listened to music till midnight. The next day he shows up. I had gone out and I bought every kind of food you could get: white bread, rye bread, pastrami, turkey, chicken, fish. I didn't know. I asked him, Michael, what does your family eat? He said, we eat anything, Ron. So I got it all. Laid it out on the big dining room table. They show up right at 1 o'clock with Walter Yetnikoff and Erwin Siegelstein, the chairman and people at Columbia. Gamble, Huff. Nobody's eating for an hour. I went over to Michael and I said, Michael, did I do something wrong? Should we say a prayer? I'm not against that. What do you want to do? He said, I should have told you. And I grabbed him. I said, you should have told me what? He said, we're all vegetarians. I wanted to kill him. We had all this food. We had all this food. So I called a local farm. They made up a salad for 20 people. And that night, we went to see the show. And their uniforms had sweat rings underneath their arms. They didn't look like the Jackson 5. So I went into my office that Monday. I filled out a deal memo for 3 albums firm. I could only approve up to $1 million. And I approved 3 albums at $333,333.33. Well, I thought I was cool. It went all the way upstairs to Arthur Taylor, the president of CBS, who called Walter Yetnikoff, not me, my boss, and said, I'm not going to approve this deal. He said, well, you have to talk to Ron Alexenburg. He's running the label. So the phone rang, and they asked if I could come up to his office. I had no idea what he was going to do. Walter didn't tell me. I get up to his office. He hands me back my deal memo, and he says, I'm not going to approve this. Why? They're a cartoon act. They're on CBS Saturday mornings. I lost you, Joey. There you are.
All right, I'm right here.
I said, they're a cartoon act. I said, do you see this building next door? It's called ABC. I sat down with Leonard Goldenson and Elton Rule last night, offering me the presidency of ABC, and I don't want to move to California. Back on your original point. I'll get them to buy Epic Records. And I stormed out of his office. This is the president of CBS Inc. I got back to my office. The phone rang, the executive intercom. I picked it up hastily, and I said, yeah, you're supposed to say your name. Yeah. And he said, Ron, this is Bill Paley. Yeah, right. I hung up. My secretary comes in, and she says, what's the address of this building? I said, 51 West 52nd. Why? She says, so extension 5152 would be pretty good, huh? Going, yeah, why are you doing this to me? She says, call it. And I call it, bam, 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 on a touch phone. Bill Paley here, can I help you? I go, oh. He says, come on upstairs and explain why you want to sign the Jacksons. And I walk into the board of directors room, and there it is. There's Walter Cronkite, God rest his soul, and Marietta Tree, and they look at me and said, why do you want to sign the Jacksons? And I said, anybody that can have a #1 song singing about a rat.
Which was?
Ben, the two of us need look no more. That's the story. Did I know that Quincy Jones and he would hook up and sell close to 100 million records? No. But Quincy's from Chicago. We hit it home together. I love your bird. Your bird wants you to shut up.
No, he's tweeting.
I know. But that's the story. And it's not that often that you can sign an icon. And when Michael died, I was about to visit a radio station in Tampa, Florida, with Jim Jeffries. You remember him.
Oh, yeah.
Promotion man. And I got over to NBC, and they put me in a chair, and I thought I could change my clothes. No. And they wanted to know my feelings. And I said, my feelings are very sad. And it is to this day that he passed. No.
Yeah. Well, we've had a lot of people pass. That's
too many.
I mean, we've gone to more funerals than we have weddings now. That's no good.
Well, look what happened today. Today alone. I mean,
yeah, we lost Little Richard.
Yep. And I stayed in that room, and so did you at the Riot Hyatt on Sunset.
That's where Harry Nilsson almost threw me off the roof because I was doing intros over the records with jingles. Remember?
Oh,
That was
okay.
yeah. That was another
Well,
story, but another show.
well, I have
Ron, we
to
got a
tell you,
lot. We have so many shows to do. You and I. You got to do a series. You have to do a series. I mean, you know, you lived a full life of excitement that the American public didn't even know existed. That's why I wanted to talk about the promotion. They don't. You've been under the radar. You know, and people in the business, everybody knows who you are in the industry, and you certainly have made a lot of stars. But you're not been Clive Davis, who was a public. Uh, you know, he was put on the earth to probably be made famous and worshipped. And I don't think you've ever looked. You never sought that. You didn't ever look for that kind of fame. You didn't look for anybody to do anything special for you. Just you were always behind the artists and doing regular things. Whether it was the band Chicago, which I think we should talk about for a minute. I mean, you know, you've just been there. You've been there for so many people and so many things, but no one knows about the value.
can you
Now
get
they
that
do.
little bird off your shoulder?
Yeah, is she
Thank you.
bothering you?
No, it's bothering Frank too, and
Oh well,
you
Frank
know,
is always Frank. Frank is a
he's
technician.
cool. It's cutting in on your earphone. But no, I have to tell you, the behind the scenes, there should be a museum for promotion men and women that really. You remember Paulie Gallus? I mean,
Oh yeah,
guys that really were responsible for getting Tony Bennett on the radio. You
yeah,
know, nobody wanted to play that San Francisco song because it was promoting San Francisco. Okay, but
yeah.
we did it. You know, we did it.
Well, there goes the bird. So
Good.
you know, you've done a great job with me today, and I'm sorry for the interruptions and the primitive broadcasting because we're
No, I
using.
think it's great. You know, you were there at the very beginning when I used to come up to OR at night and we would sit there and those people were kissing your ass, giving you rotten food. So you'd mention their name on the air. And I still love, I still love the cayenne pepper that you got me conned into that I tried one day on the air. Okay. Yeah. And I couldn't talk for 20 minutes.
Well, that's the way you do it when you don't want someone to, you know, when you want to quiet a guest, you keep them
Yeah,
quiet.
absolutely.
So
But
what are we doing? What are we doing with our lives now? What's going on with this industry? Are we going to go back to anything that resembles building fame locally, regionally, nationally? Are we gonna
Well, I did
have
it. I was asked last Saturday on a podcast what I thought the next move's going to be, and they
yeah,
were coming out of Vegas, and I said Vegas will never be not. No, I shouldn't use the word never. Vegas will not come back as quickly as they think it will when you have chains on the doors because they never planned on ever locking it up. But I think it could go to small supper clubs where you
yeah,
could have a table. Let's say you and I and two people, we would sit at a table, and somebody could entertain. I think the
yeah,
$300 ticket, the $500 ticket is over. I think the big festivals are postponed for a long time. Look at sports, going to play to empty stadiums. And Joe Buck the other day made such a schmuck out of himself saying that, well, put in some crowd noise. When the guy hits a home run, we'll put in some old crowd noise. Are you kidding? Okay, or when a guy makes a basket, that'll come from some can. No, I think the concert business can come back in a small way. I think the overhead will be a lot less because you're not going to be putting these extravaganza shows on with pyrotechniques and for a while. I think it's the first time that the major talent agencies, the William Endeavors and the ICMs, they're smart. They're all getting together and they say, okay, what are we going to do with these superstars,
yeah,
you know, who are used to performing? I mean, your friend that I've just become friendly with, Wayne Newton, had to cancel a year of an income of entertaining. And I don't care how much money you have. It's the frustration of not getting up in the morning and looking forward to going to work. You and I can still do that. I look forward to this today,
yeah.
being with you, talking about our business. Thank goodness we can do that. But how many people get up in the morning and just say, oh shit, same old,
Yeah.
you know? And here in California right now, they're racing to the beaches. Joey,
No
what's
good.
the matter with them? You know? And one of the biggest records I had that nobody wanted, I think I would go there with pina colada and just sit there and drink till I couldn't drink anymore. I mean, that's how crazy it is. Yeah? And I think
Pina Colada. Now, wait, who was the artist on Pina Colada?
Rupert Holmes.
And what happened to Rupert Holmes? Where is he?
Rupert became very successful as a writer.
Yeah.
Edmund Drood, the Broadway show. He just had a terrible manager. He had a manager that tortured all my promotion men and women. And they called me on the phone. Here's a record that went, I think, top 10, if not number 1. And it didn't have a follow-up. Because my promotion people called me and they said, Rupert's okay, but this manager's off the wall. And that's what people also, you can talk about Irving Azoff and people like him, they don't like him. He's a great manager. And Marty Ehrlichman, who's been Barbra Streisand's manager for 52 years without a contract. Barbra Streisand. They really helped those careers. So if you got promotion and management that could work together, it was the same thing with Jimmy Guercio and the band Chicago. Those guys, after a while, didn't like each other, didn't want to talk to each other. That's what happened with all the bands. That's why you got to applaud the Rolling Stones. You got to applaud Mick Jagger and say, you're still there. You're still doing it, a daddy at 72.
They're not going to have 60,000 people in the stadium right now.
No. And he's one of the few, I'll bet you, he saved a lot of money and made a lot of money, okay?
Oh, yeah.
But, you can talk about the superstars in any sport. I mean, these owners, these teams that are losing fortunes of money every day, every game. Look at this here in California. A $5 billion stadium is set to open empty. They're going to play the first Cowboys-Rams game September, I think, 15th, with nobody there.
Where is it? What's it called?
It's called some weird-ass name, but it's $5 billion. It's where the Hollywood Park used to be. It's where the racetrack used to be. They tore it down. They built an unbelievable stadium, $5 billion. All I know is that the In-N-Out is right around the corner. But let me tell you a quick story.
That's a hamburger place. Everybody.
Let me tell you a story about somebody. Let me tell you 2 quickies. Last Saturday, my doorbell rang, and there was a young man standing there with 2 boxes of White Castle hamburgers. And he asked for Ron Alexenburg. And I said, who are you? He says, my name is Johnny Bird. I said, Johnny, you were on the podcast with me. You're a songwriter from Vegas. He says, yes, I wanted to meet you. He drove up here with his wife and 3 kids. They'd never been to California. They're from Minnesota. And I said, you didn't call. I mean, I'm not going to let you in my house, but what can I offer you? He said, do you mind if I play a song for you? He went to his car, pulled out a complete system, brought his 3 kids to help him, set it up in my backyard. Marnie was here sending you her regards. Our youngest daughter was her birthday, and he performed. Those are the days, okay? I'm going to do all I can to help that guy. There's another one out of Vegas. His name is Dennis Blair. Dennis, in 2015, has been going around making music in Nashville, and I met him. Here it is, Joey. He sends me a song called I Miss You, George Jones. I signed George at the end of his career with Tammy. So I called one of the dearest friends I have in this business, Charlie Daniels. And I said, I got a song for you called I Miss You, George Jones. It's all about how great that talent that man was. And I tell you right now, it's going to be recorded at Charlie's home studio. I'm going to promote it like in the olden days, going to mail it out to radio stations, and off we go. And you know who else reunited himself with me because he heard the podcast was Clint Holmes. Clint Holmes, who I hadn't spoken to in 40 years.
Well, there's a guy from Buffalo.
Yes. Today's his birthday. Let's wish him happy birthday. But I hadn't spoken to him in 40 years.
As long as you brought him up, he is so charitable. He's done all this for years, even though he made it very big in Vegas too.
Yes.
He was generous with telethons for the Variety Club. Now, there's a guy who was very genuinely performing for everybody, no matter what he got out of it, and he didn't ask.
I'm going to give you and Frank his number. I'm going to call him and tell him at some point you'll call him because he's a great interview. But hold on, he's in a theatrical performance, and he's got some elderly guy from Cedarhurst who's made $1 bazillion and thinks all you have to do is give somebody like me money and you're going to have hits. And I said to him, how'd you make your money? He says, in the real estate business. I'm going, good. So you made a lot of money in the real estate business. And he's got a 5-story brownstone in New York. Good. He said, but I wrote some original music and it's good. And Clint sang it. And I said, we haven't spoken in 40 years. Do you want to know how your record became a hit? Now, you had one big hit, Playground in My Mind.
That's right.
Well, when Frank, his gangster producer, came into my office from Westbury with harness racing in his background, and he didn't like my A&R man at the time. It wasn't Steve Popovich. He said, would you listen to this record because your A&R man doesn't like it? And I just left Columbia, where, you know, Rubber Ducky was a big hit, and children's records were something I was very fond of. And he plays for me, my name is Michael, I got a nickel. And I said, I want it. What do you want for it? He said, $25,000 for the album. That was nothing. I said, okay. And I called in my secretary and I said, go down to the Bank of New York. Here, you're talking about promotion. Go down to the Bank of New York and get $100 worth of nickels, quart nickel, $2 rolls. And I'm going to send out 21 dubs to key radio stations with a roll of nickels. My name is Michael, I got a nickel. And Clint said, you can't make that up. I said, I'm not. And it's a true story. And the record was a hit. 41 years later, he heard the truth. And we've hooked up again. And got a guy that is doing illustrations. I'll send them to you. He's putting to raise money for these out-of-work entertainers. He's a phenomenal illustrator. He's today's Hirschfield, who I know you knew. And he did Rochelle and I, and I'll send you pictures. And he's doing all of the Vegas entertainers for coffee mugs, of which they're $20, of which $10 goes to the artist. Okay?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, and I ordered 7 of them because I'm working with 7 people. I said, stop doing illustrations. I have 7 coffee mugs. Rochelle went nuts this morning when I took a picture of the 49 mugs. Who the hell has 49 coffee mugs?
All right,
donate them.
Now, my last little effort here to dig something out of you. You know, these are things that you're such a good person, and I'm not stroking you. But I want to ask you what you think about age, about we getting older. What are your thoughts on that?
I was terribly offended by the governor of Texas. If I've ever met that individual, I would destroy that person's name when they said, well, you're 77 years old. You got to take care of yourself. We're going to take care of the young ones. Okay? That's a whole lot of horse shit. All right? Because, yeah, we're susceptible. Yeah, you and I have friends that are 90. And I go shopping for them. And their wives say, oh, he can go out. I said, no, he can't. He can't. I went out to Thousand Oaks, you know only too well. And I picked up Harry's berries, the greatest strawberries I could find. And I brought them to people. Okay? I think age means nothing. When I was a professional bowler at the age of 16, they told me I was young and I wouldn't amount to anything until they needed me to strike out in the 10th frame to win a tournament. And then when I became the youngest vice president at CBS, as you know, we were there at 26, age doesn't mean anything. It's how you feel. And part of what you do and why you look the way you do, good or me, you get up in the morning and you're creative. The juices flow. It has nothing to do with age. Yeah. Okay? It really doesn't. And when you look at Mario Cuomo, that would have been a good vice president, and Lee Iacocca, who you and I talked about, would have been a good running mate for him. Now look at what we got. Look at what we're doing. Who's concerned about the elderly? You know who is? The hospitals. And those people deserve every bit of plaudits we can give them. The nurses. I've been over there, as you know, with my son, who almost lost his foot. 3 years ago, he almost lost his leg. Diabetes. Yeah. The way they are taking care of people is just incredible, okay? And yes, the masks, I don't know whether they work or they don't work. None of us do. But I'll tell you what I did do, and don't be upset. I took all the Starbucks coffee mugs that I had because they're made in China, and I'm sending them back.
I love you. Ron Alexenburg, what a guy. What a guy. Thank
you. You bring out the best in me.
No.
What are we eating today? What are we going to eat today?
Well, you're in L.A. and I'm in Fort Lauderdale. You know you don't like anything. You're a fresher, and you're not going to fresh here.
I got to tell you what I did because of you. I was watching The Sopranos again, all the episodes, and there was Cha-Cha, God rest his soul. And I said to Rochelle, I'm making spaghetti and meatballs. So I've been cooking. Pretty bad, but I've been cooking.
We had the meatball eating contest, and the mayor of New York was on the stage with me. And it was a day he dropped out of the race, and he was supposed to be a judge. And someone says, "Well, what's he going to do?" And I said, "He just dropped out." I mean, that's it. I don't particularly like politics right now because I don't think the people who are in place are there for the reasons that what we need to serve what we need. That's the reason.
They're there for themselves.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so we're there. We made a little broadcast here, and I hope someone has.
I hope you're happy with it.
Oh, I'm happy with you. I love you.
It's nice seeing Frank. I haven't seen him in a long time. How does it feel to sit there and not say a word, Frank? Kind of tough, huh? These two yentas.
Well,
so when am I going to see you? When are you going to get the hell over here? You got to do that thing and call Johnny K.
Yeah, well, we got to get Frankie. We have to celebrate Wayne Newton too. Don't forget.
Yeah. So give me a list of who you want, and I'll help you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ron Alexenburg. Don't forget to look for him on his own podcast one day. Ronnie Records, if you want to look him up on the internet. You're great. I love you.
I love you too, Joey. Hug your kids.
Let a smile be your umbrella. Don't get a mouthful of rain.
Thank you.